Women who got pregnant in their teen years, how was it? It was horrible. I was in a bad situation. My dad had just committed suicide, my mom was a full-fledged addict, pills, alcohol, cocaine, and I was dating a guy who was extremely manipulative. We were both 17 and he convinced me that if we had a baby my mom would sober up, and he wouldn't cheat anymore. Well, he continued to cheat, and my mom didn't sober up at all. I lost the baby at 14 weeks, and unbeknownst to me, I have von Willebrand's. The sheer amount of blood was terrifying. My ex said that I was faking it, and went to a party and my mom was passed out. I walked to my neighbor's house and begged them to call an ambulance. I ended up having to have a blood transfusion. I still have nightmares about that night. The mixture of grief from losing the baby and the fact that I could have bled to death was overwhelming. To top it off, my mom threw a party when I got home because she was stressed. We found out she was pregnant a month later, and the only time the father was around her was at that party. So essentially, she conceived my younger sister because I had a miscarriage. Holy fuck, I want to punch your ex in the face so badly. He went to a fucking party while his girlfriend was bleeding out internally. Here's an internet hug, if it's of any consolation. Horrible and terrifying. Always felt sick, was constantly exhausted. Was terrified to tell my family, was shamed by them when I finally did. High school was hell, since kids are already mean and gossipy. Ended up miscarrying, a lot of blood was involved with that, and now whenever I get my period that's what my mind flashes back to. I don't want kids now, have permanently prevented having them, and will forever wonder if it's because of how bad a period in my life that was. I had just turned 15 at the time that I got pregnant, so imagine puberty with your hormones amped way up. It was truly awful, but that's just my experience. Others may not have had it quite as bad. Some things I thought of to add. Considering how unsupportive my family was, they didn't let me talk about it all after it was over, so that festered into a nice mix of depression and anxiety. Felt so riddled with guilt and shame that telling my husband about it 6 years later made me throw up. This is, for many people, something you keep dealing with through life. Even if you don't keep the child doesn't make it. It is something you experienced and will always be in your memory. When any of you have a teenage child, please be honest with them about safe sex, pregnancy. And don't scare them so much that they think they can't come to you for help. That is honestly the worst thing you could do, aside from disowning them for getting pregnant, as a teen. Got pregnant at 18. Found out 2 weeks after I had been accepted to one of the top universities in the country. Went anyways, screw you guidance counselor who told me to go to community college. Graduate, then did MSc. Then PhD at another university. Worked my way up to a 6-figure salary. Then just sent my now teenage daughter off to university. Ugh, I hate guidance counselors in high school. They literally have no idea what they're talking about. I've been a mother since 13, 21 now. It was hell. High school is bad enough, but at being the first one to be a parent to the mix, and I was harassed most of my time in school. Parents were supportive and about the only reason we made it. Currently live on my own and things have been at their worst in some regards, but I love my son and he's what keeps me going. You finished high school? Good on you. Every teen mother I've known ended up a dropout or homeschooled, effectively a dropout given their situation. Yep, was incredibly hard, but my parents made sure I did. Sorry to hear that. I hope you'll be okay now despite tough times. If you want to tell, was it an accident or something else? Accident in the sense I didn't even know how pregnancy happens until I figured out I was pregnant. Never was too curious and didn't ask many questions as a kid. Parents refused to let me attend sex education in school. Ended up being pressured into it by a boy I liked, not knowing what was happening and incredibly uncomfortable during the whole experience. Didn't want to do it again, but began getting morning sickness and eventually my mom took me to the doctor where I found out. Parents were mad at me at first, but eventually blamed themselves for not being more open to me. Essentially, I'm a walking example of why sex education is important. The same happened to me. I grew up in a religious household with no sex education. I got pregnant at 14 and had my child at 15. My child's father was 17 and was 18. He knew better. We didn't work out, but that's often the situation when you have a child young. The kids at school were mean, the people at church were worse, and my parents were as supportive as they could be. They too blamed themselves for not educating me other than sex before marriage was bad. I graduated high school. I moved out at 18 with my child and have been on my own since. I have been in college part-time for 6 years, and this year, since my child is in school full-time, I have been able to be in college full-time and will be graduating in spring 2017 with an associate's. I have a part-time job in my field and I have a full-time position once I graduate. I'm engaged and will be getting married once I'm out school. We have a house, 2 cars, and a life. I give my daughter everything she needs and I find ways to give her opportunities that I never had. My life is coming together, through hard work and sacrifice. Well, the actual getting pregnant was pretty okay. It went downhill from there. Telling people sucked. Throwing up every few hours sucked. Getting as big as a whale was not fun. Being unable to attend school, childcare subsidy had a year-plus wait list and I had to work during the evenings when my mom could watch the twins, was heartbreaking. Not killing the twins' father was an exercise in restraint that I still haven't fully recovered from. It got better when the twins were about a year old and I got an apartment and a boyfriend, now my husband, and I'm reasonably happy now. The twins are amazing kids and worth it. But damn, that was a dark point. Teenagers who have no serious problems can be absolutely miserable because the adolescent brain is a natural problem magnifier. I had that same brain but with real, actual problems and tough decisions to make. I was 18. My parents lived on the other side of the country. My ex and I lived together with roommates to make the rent. We were so poor we each got 1 can of SpaghettiOs a day. I had no prenatal care and went into preterm labor at 6 months. I spent the rest of the time on bed rest and got my prenatal care by going to the hospital once a month to make sure the baby was okay. She was born on my due date, 6 pounds 2 ounces. She is now a healthy 28-year-old. The biggest thing I remember is how hungry I was all the time. Toward the end we were making a pot of black-eyed peas and cornbread, and we would eat that freaking same pot of black-eyed peas for the whole week. Sometimes we would splurge a fried salt pork and fried cabbage. This was in the 1980s. Food stamps were harder to get and Medicare was impossible. 010 would not recommend. And here I am 21 with a wife and 2 kids wondering how I am going to make it on 2K a month. I applaud you. To be fair, 2 kids at 21 is also pretty impressive. At 21, I was incredibly irresponsible, so I applaud the both of you. It was hard, but the timing made it to where I was able to graduate. Graduated in May, had the baby in the beginning of July. I got married while still in school. The dad was a good guy. He is a good dad. Ended up still going to college, just a 2-year nursing degree. Read a lot of Dave Ramsey books and had to grow up really fast. Instead of chasing dreams, I chased security. I became a mom at 16. It was hard and I sacrificed a lot, but it was totally worth it. If I had to go back, I wouldn't do a thing different. It shaped me and made me who I am today. I was not able to finish high school, but I got my GED less than a year later. I eventually went to school for a year and became a nurse. I'm 36 now and my daughter is 19. She grew up knowing we didn't have a lot of money for toys, but that also made her appreciate what we did have. It also made her hypervigilante against getting pregnant. I was extremely lucky to have an amazing mom who was and still is my rock. 3 times a week my girl, mom, and I have a 3-way phone call to stay in touch. My throat swells up every time I think of her and how amazing she is. She was able to leave our tiny town and go away to college, and is studying abroad next year. To the girls that are struggling with little ones now or are pregnant, stay strong. It will be the hardest thing you do. There are times you'll be overwhelmed and break down crying, but if you work hard and keep your head on straight, I promise, it's worth all the struggle. It was scary. I was 14 when I became pregnant. Had no idea what to do. Was shamed by my family and all of my friends weren't friends anymore. I was terrified, to say the least. I looked into adoption, because I knew I couldn't give the baby the life it deserved. I would have been a mom at 15, if I had carried the pregnancy full term. I lost my son at 18 weeks. When I was younger, I didn't handle it well. Years of therapy later, and I am doing much better. I keep my son's ashes in a fireproof safe, and miss him every day. Thanksgiving is a really hard holiday for me, seeing I miscarried the day before. Not sure if I want kids later on in life, but who knows? I'm terrified of it happening again. I was diagnosed with PTSD, and sometimes the thought of having children scares me shitless. Hey, I'm so sorry. I dealt with something very similar, but miscarried near the end of the first trimester a few weeks before Christmas. It's a hard thing to get over, and I'm really glad to hear you're doing better. Stay strong. Is it normal for a miscarried fetus to be cremated and given back to the family? Or did I read something wrong? Depending on how far along you have to give birth, this starts way earlier than some realize. Then there is a baby's body to either bury or cremate. I found out I was pregnant when I was 15, had my kids when I was 16. Having a baby when you are young is rough, but having two at one time is nearly impossible to handle. But I did handle it. I am forever thankful to those who would still associate themselves with me as my twin boys grew into very angry toddlers. I dropped out of school and jumped back in a total of 5 times and still couldn't finish. Seeing how I couldn't do that, I went to find work. I've been working ever since and supporting them to the best of my abilities. The father was absent. He would come and go, but I never forced him to love his children. He never did willingly either. It worked out okay because I'm now in a very loving and stable relationship with a very kind man who accepts my children as his own. Wouldn't change a thing. Definitely still get rude looks from people in public while toting my 2 young kids around and being so young myself. But those people don't matter, so it's fine. Do you have a similar story? Leave a comment and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more videos like this one.